Oral cup
Ooh,
shot.
ooh, tang, tang,
Penis.
walla, walla, bing, bang. Ooh, tang,
Got
tang,
you.
walla, walla, bing, bang.
Boy
We're live.
Door. Oh, here we go.
We're live.
Live now?
Yeah, we're live.
Awesome.
Welcome to the.
Penis, etc., dick jokes.
But anyway.
But on a more serious note, Armistice Day.
Yes, welcome to the 13th.
Veterans Day.
Welcome to the 13th episode of Burning Subjects. Where today we are going to be talking about nothing but either locomotives that have operated during World War II or were built for World War II, or were built because of restrictions based on World War II. And we're also going to be talking about
locomotives built for World War I.
Yes, too.
Are we also going to, we obviously got to talk about, engines that were built by the U.S. Army or designed by the US ATC, I should say.
Of course, yes. So let's start off with the beautiful Pacific that you were mentioning. A beautiful Pacific, remember?
One of the locomotives that was featured in your top 20 extinct locomotives list.
No, not top 10 extinct. I'm talking about 5551.
5551 is not a Pacific, it's a 10-wheeler.
Oh.
Yes.
I didn't know.
Well, okay, actually, let me get the Wikipedia page up real quick, but I wasn't going to talk about that engine particularly, but also, give a bit of a history of the class in question. For those of you who don't know what 5551 is, it's basically the last built member and also basically an engine that's being reincarnated from an extinct class, the LMS Patriots. LMS stands for London, England, and Scottish. And some of you are probably thinking, oh no, steam locomotive, I'm burning subjects. It's not American anymore. Unsubscribe. Shut up. This is actually fairly important.
This is Burning Subjects. We can talk about any steam locomotive we want. It's my show.
Okay, so the Patriots, they were actually a mixed traffic class of locomotives, more so leaning towards the passenger side of things. 52 of them were built between 1930 and 1934. All of them by the LMS themselves. 42 of them were built at Crewe, and the other 10 were built at Derby. Both of those cities had locomotive factories owned by the LMS themselves, so just saying. They were designed by Sir Henry Fowler, and in terms of geometry relating to tractive effort, you had a threesome of 18 by 20 a threesome of 18 by 20 inch how's it English? Let me try that again. A threesome of 18 by 26 inch cylinders, a boiler pressure of 200 pounds per square inch, and driving wheels of 6'9" or 81 inches in diameter. And that gives you a tractive effort of 26,520 pounds, which is good for a passenger locomotive, maybe something of a mixed traffic design. So, they were actually built for express passenger purposes. So, unfortunately, none of them were preserved. They didn't save any, so all of them ended up being cut up for scrap. They were numbered 5500 through 5551. And the reason why I actually bring the class up, even though it wasn't really built for wartime use, and was definitely it came in during peacetime. Basically, the last one of the class, number 5551, is actually very close to being fully reincarnated, because there is a replica project for 5550 for the 5551 that's nearing completion, and though sadly it has been delayed. But basically, one of the original plans was to have that locomotive in steam by November of 2018, preferably by the 11th, because it was the intention that this locomotive would have been a remembrance engine. And for those who don't know what Remembrance Day is, it's basically the British version of Veterans Day, with a particular focus to everybody who has served and didn't come back from World War I.
But also World War II and many other wars after that.
Yeah, but in particular for World War I, because they wanted to have the new 5551, which is named the Unknown Warrior, to be steamed in time for the 100th anniversary of the ending of World War One. Sadly, that didn't happen because, unfortunately, the company that was going to do the boiler kind of pulled out, and somebody else had to do the work instead. So the engine is still under construction, but hopefully they will be able to get their heads together. Hopefully, also, when this whole Corona thing is done and dusted with, and then things can probably they can pick up the pace again and get the locomotive finished, because it would be actually quite a significant locomotive to finish at any Remembrance Day. So yeah, if they when they are able to get progress again, maybe shoot for Remembrance Day on a different within the next couple of years or so. But yeah, I mean, and the reason why it's called the Unknown Warrior is it's in relation to all the soldiers that we didn't really know. The average folks who were left behind their civilian lives to fight for the greater good. So, yeah, that's basically why I wanted to mention the new 5551. Besides, Patriot is kind of a patriotic or war-related name, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's better than the other nickname for this class, which was Baby Scots. Being basically slightly smaller versions of the Royal Scot
Baby Scot. The babies.
I'll be right back. I have to go do select.
Just imagine calling a famous locomotive the Baby Scot. It's like,
oh well.
It's like,
well, they probably would, because Patriots were Baby Scots. But anyway, that's basically 5551. I chucked a lovely image of the locomotive in the UK channel on Andrew's Steam Star headquarters server on Discord. So yeah, you guys can check it out now.
You know what?
And pardon the misnumbered tender. That's just a bit of a stand-in until they can find a different one.
Should I tell the viewers my little Christmas present, or what? I should wait. But anyway.
So, now it's my turn, I guess.
Yeah, what locomotive would you like to talk about a war?
So, this isn't really talking about one specific locomotive, but a group of locomotives. Trench railways. Trench railways, they were small, but really effective locomotives. They run on narrow gauge track. The countries that mainly use them during the war, well, more specifically the First World War, were France, Germany, British. The United States built a series of these trench locomotives for Britain, built by Alco, Baldwin, I think also the Vulcan Iron Works. I'm not sure, but so what made trench locomotives so effective? They pretty much transported soldiers to the front lines themselves. In further areas, you had small steam locomotives, but when you're nearly entering the trenches themselves, they had to go to diesel locomotives because if you just choose a steam locomotive, the smoke is clearly going to give away their view, which allows the German for artillery fire. So that's
one well-placed shot, and the locomotive goes kablooey, and many men will lose their lives. In relation to those early generation diesels, I assume that they were, diesel mechanic. They were effectively very small automobiles on train.
Basically.
Yeah.
I know. Okay, I'll just share this tiny little image, even though Oops. Sorry.
Just need to move around a little.
But yeah, here. This is a pair of trench. They were actually called tractors, not like diesels, but they were used in this. As you can see here, they were used in the Minco Yard in Australia during the Battle of Passchendaele. But yeah, trench locomotives, they played a huge role in the war.
What was that I heard in the background?
I don't know.
But did I miss anything while I was gone or no?
Let's see. Where did you post the image? Oh, burning subjects.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and those are
Oh.
some of the.
That is a weird locomotive.
Damn.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like two of them coupled together, cab to cab, or ass, sweet ass.
But
Because you can't.
The ones that didn't
Wait.
go into the front themselves, you got these ones. This particular one was built by Alco.
That's a dub. That's Baldwin 1012D.
Wait,
right?
guys, I have a good name for those locomotives. You know, the ones that we showed earlier? We can call them assassins.
But yeah.
I thought that those were actually panwheelers, not prairies. I mean, they were definitely pannier tanks with the tanks towards the front, but I could have sworn that they were, 460 10-wheelers, not 262 prairies.
About these tractors or tractions? What are they called?
Yes, tractors.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of, Dan.
Tractors? I actually
They were called
think
tractors.
I think I have a good name for them though. We can call them assassins because you can't say assassin without ass-to-ass contact.
Well played, my friend.
Anyway, so now, but what about Russia? Russia also used trench locomotives. What did they use? They used the French 600 millimeter gauge and the 750 millimeter gauge systems. More than 1,243 miles of narrow gauge trench railways were built. And of course, Russia used them against Germany during the First World War, and I really don't think they were used during the Russian Revolution, because the Russian Revolution, in terms of their armored locomotives, they were different. And this leads me to my other thing I want to talk about in terms of war locomotives. Russian armored trains.
Wait.
Yeah, you've seen photos of like Battlefield 5. They had.
Wait, no, Dan.
Yes.
I need to get someone in here to talk about those because someone has been wanting to talk about these armored trains forever, and now it's his chance to. So let me just mention him.
Polonius?
No, not Polonius. Nut. A certain guy who likes tanks.
I can't hear you because of the whistle. What did you say?
A certain guy who likes tanks.
You mean your friend Josh?
Yes. For the first time, he's going to be actually in the
Alright.
Well, hopefully. Let's see.
So yeah, and then we got. So, what were these armored trains?
We're gonna let Josh talk about the armored locomotives. But what's another locomotive we could talk about in the meantime?
But outside of Russian armored trains, we also have Russian O-10O steam locomotives. They were built during World War I. They were well known in terms of Russian locomotives, and they still are. And at least about 11,000 of these O-10O locomotives were built in Russia.
What?
Yes.
11,000?
11,000!
Yes, you heard me.
Of the exact same class.
Well, they had different subclasses. They got the Class E, the Class EM, the EG, the ESH, the EU, and the ER. But they all fall into the E category.
E.
Basically, they all kind of use the same basic.
Yeah.
Like there were only like minor mechanical variations to them. Like you would say find between the FEF2 and FEF3 series of the UP Northerns.
They had around 11,000 manufactured in Russia and other countries such as Czechoslovakia, Germany, Sweden, Hungary, and Poland. And hell, these things even outnumbered the German Class 52 Kriegslock locomotives.
I was about to say that. Here I thought fucking Bavaria 52 were the most numerously produced steam locomotives in the world. And then you mentioned some fucking Russian O10Os that completely annihilated them.
But these things were then later and these things was eventually subserted by the SL class 210 decapods and the further development of the E class, later the L class 210 decapods and the FE class 210-2s. Despite being the surpassed, it was not replaced, and the class was widely used until Russia's end of steam. So these things had a long history from World War I to passing the Second World War. But yeah, these engines, they've seen a lot. And they've seen the Bolshevik Revolution happen. They've seen Operation Barbarossa. They've seen everything.
Wow. Wow.
Speaking of Russian decapods, let's talk about them, shall we? So,
no, you're the Russian expert.
So, following the successfulness of the O10Os, and also during World War I, the Russian Empire, or the Tsar Empire, they were heavily asked. What? So the Russians, they ordered different 210 decapods from the Baldwin Locomotive Works and many other shops. At least about several thousand were sent into Russia, but however, only several hundred actually made it to Russia because the Bolshevik Revolution broke out, and the Soviet Union couldn't afford the rest of the class, thus stranding the rest of the Russian decapods.
1702 and 1993, 1992. Wow.
So, yeah.
That's a cool photo.
Yeah, Russian decapods were... The rest of the Russian decapods, they were left in the United States, and they were later re-gauged for standard gauge, and they found service all around, like multiple different railroads in the U.S., and even Canada, actually.
Including the Frisco, obviously. Like,
yep, Frisco 1630.
I was about to say, when we mention Russian decapods, like for American audiences, one that will usually spring to mind is the friggin' 1630 from the Frisco.
And there's also quite a few others that are still preserved. Let me get a picture of Frisco 1615.
Oh, and I think there's also Ford Airline 584.
Because honestly, it looks a little bit like, for some reason, I guess, like the yellow that the S-160s had.
Come on, Josh.
Either that or the Reading Rambles for some reason. I'm going to post it in U.S. locomotives. More than likely, it's going to take forever because it's a fucking megabyte.
Well, Jim. Are we ever going to actually build an S-160 on Gmod?
I guess I'm a bit swamped with other projects at the moment, but I would love to build an S-160 in Gmod.
Hey, Jim, how about this? Jim.
Wouldn't necessarily go in prototypical version. You know how you would expect an S-160 to look. You know, with the single air pump out to the side on the front of the smoke box. I would, make a slightly modified version with the friggin' air pump within the walkways, and then a British-style smoke box.
Well,
at least to begin with. But trust me, I would love to build a fucking S100.
Well, how about this? I try working on the wheelbase and the frame, and when we can't, let's make this a collaboration, like the 1187.
Yeah, granted, I can actually, provide a wheelbase for you.
Well, of course, we can't have it prop built for too long. The best way that I think we should go about building this S100 is getting the diameter of drive wheel, for props, and then we build the hollow base based on the diameter of drive wheel we got.
Also, guys, did you see 1615?
No.
Let's see, where did you chuck it? US
locomotives.
Oh.
Holy crap.
That's ugly.
That's probably in its earlier display years. I'm going to say that it has a stealth Bumblebee vibe. If some of you out there are, fans of Transformers, with some toy lines when, the main Kid Appeal character, Bumblebee, one of the, that yellow Autobot, sometimes he gets a stealth redeco where, he's predominantly black with little bits of yellow. I'm thinking that.
I do like the Reading Rambles paint scheme, but this looks awful, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not a good look. And my fucking game froze.
Especially the fact that someone decided to paint the cylinder cover caps.
I gotta leave. Please make sure that my props don't disappear because I'm gonna be mad.
Right.
Well, I guess in the meantime, while we wait for Josh or Dan, let's talk about a couple of S160s individually.
Oh yeah,
I got 5 of them.
I take it we're going to be talking about 2 Steam Stars. You know what I mean?
Not just 2. We're actually going to be talking about 5.
Ooh.
5 S160s.
We're talking about some of them that are preserved in the UK.
Yeah, some of them from the UK and some of them from America. 3 of them individual are going to be from America.
Let me guess. One of the S160 tours out in the United Kingdom that we're going to talk about is 5820, which is unintentionally named after me.
Big Jim.
I named after the locomotive.
But anyway, we'll talk about Big Jim. We'll talk about Big Jim later. Let's talk about the first one, which is directly still painted as the U.S. Army paint scheme, which is actually at the Age of Steam Roundhouse. Part of their 24 locomotive collection.
I don't remember its number.
You don't remember? You really don't remember its number?
I'm actually going to look it up.
You want to know its number?
Here it is, number 2630, I believe. 2630.
Yes, it's 2630. But anyway, 2630, of course, along with the other S160s, were built for the war, but 2630 is one of the very few that actually still has its original U.S. Army paint scheme.
It actually looks really good.
Yeah.
Granted, I would have preferred, a different placement of the air pump to allow the door to sit in the middle, but
the paint scheme itself.
I do like the shove headlight, and the Army green does look particularly cool on it.
Especially since frequently at the Age of Steam Roundhouse, they take the locomotive out of the shed and they do photo chargers with it. It's not running under its own power, sadly, but
because it's only a cosmetic refurbishment.
But the locomotive looks amazing in its condition, especially in the photo.
It would be kind of cool if they also had little white stars on the sides of the cylinders.
Oh, that would be cool.
Maybe on the center of each pilot wheel.
Well, now that we talked about one of the least famous ones in America, next we're going to be talking about the second most famous, which is in Australia, an Australian railroad S160. And that is number 55. I mean, that was number 557, which is actually getting restored to operation in Australia. It's one of the very few S160s that still reside in Australia. And this one is a very lucky survivor since, it's pulled a couple of excursions even in revenue service. And of course operated for Australia's army during World War II. But the locomotive was on a near close to getting scrapped.
Where the hell is that whistle coming from?
What do you think?
It's from me. Apparently my game froze because it's mounting workshop content.
But anyway, back to 557. 557, after its revenue service, was actually almost scrapped, like narrowly. Just days before it was about to get cut up, a collector.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
A collector who used to. A collector who used.
Hold on. I think you gotta actually, leave the game and then rejoin.
Can I continue now?
No, I'm trying to back up, but somehow I just rocketed it back. I'm sorry.
Anyway,
Continue.
back to 557. The locomotive was actually narrowly gone forever because just 4 days before the locomotive was going to be cut up, a collector who actually used to watch the locomotive during its revenue service bought the locomotive for its private collection and cosmetically restored it, and became its pride and joy until the man died, sadly, in the 70s, in which the locomotive was moved quite a couple of times before finally being moved back to Australia to be completely refurbished to operation. And its sister locomotive, number 556, is also on display just near feet away from where the locomotive is being restored.
Wait, isn't 557 in the Alaska?
Yeah, 556 is a sister locomotive.
Right.
Yeah, but if you heard about, I thought you said Australia.
Yeah, it's Australian, I think. Is it?
Points.
No, I think it's maybe Alaskan.
Oh yeah, Alaska. It's from us. It's Alaska. Whoops. Whoopsies. Sorry if I messed that up for anyone. But anyway, now on to the most famous American S160. Of course, the one that Steven was the lucky one to ride behind.
Great Smoky Mountains Railroad number 1702.
Which,
obviously my favorite. It's also the best looking S160.
Obviously. And, I apologize for any viewers who got upset about it being on my top 10 overrated Steam Excursion stars, because I know a lot of people who seem to foam over this locomotive, and I didn't know that it was that in the entirety of the railroad community, it was only those people who seemed to foam over it. So I was just unlucky. So 1702 is arguably, and in my opinion, is the best looking S160 currently anyway. Not really related to paint scheme, but when it comes to the front of the locomotive, it's clean, it's simple, and of course, it gives the great old American vibe, especially with the striping. Yeah.
I think the Tennessee Valley 610 is also a really good looking one, though some people may argue how that's not quite an S160 for some reason. So I can't really remember why.
But you know something I always find funny? The S160s weren't really meant to last since, they were sort of quickly built. But yet here they are still around and they're operating for very long times. Especially with the photo you sent in U.S. locomotives of 1702 and 1992, which is a beautiful photo, I must say.
They were intended to be throwaway locomotives, from what I heard.
Yeah, they were basically just, like recyclable, apparently. Like you just use them twice or 5 times and then you just throw them away. But not really. Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The S160s turned out to be very reliable little Connies, even though their tractive effort wasn't really the best. But when it comes to a balance between speed and power, these things could do the job. Sort of.
Well, when it comes to if it ain't broke, don't fix it, ooh, we're going to get somewhere, boys.
Okay.
Yeah, basically.
Well, S160s can be fixed in a couple of ways, but
Yeah, mainly looks, but I guess looks are subjective after all.
looks anyway. But when it comes to mechanical maladies, these things are pretty good.
Oh yeah, there were actually quite a few problems, like grease lubricators instead of oil ones.
Yeah, that's why I said pretty good. But
it didn't, which didn't really help when the bearings were made of the same white metal as the rods. When some of them were, when a huge batch of them was shipped to the United Kingdom, it said that they were going to be under steam within a few days of that arrival, but they had to be, fitted out with all kinds of different things so they could actually turn a wheel on British soil, and that was all before they discovered that the brakes didn't work. And then, of course, you had the water gauge in the cab, which wasn't particularly good.
Well, to say the least, S160s are an arguable source of, either if they're good or not. But overall, for the war, they did their job, and they're still around, and we appreciate them.
Also, it looks like Dan had to leave, sadly.
Oh.
For what? It's beyond me.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just when we were getting to the good part, I suppose.
And we still need.
I guess it's got to go to the place
for more S160s.
Well, yeah, we got 2 more S160s to talk about, and they're actually not from the States, but rather from the UK. And one of those being
Big Jim, number 5820.
Yes.
Again, no relation to me, of course.
Yes. Which, actually, there is a problem. I don't know anything about the UK's S160s. Fuck.
Let me actually look it up somewhat.
And that's why I don't usually talk about British locomotives, because I don't know crap about them. Except for the very first ones.
About them,
this is why you really should have started watching Steam Locos in Profile.
I watched 1 or 2, but that was it.
You should have watched everything and buy the DVDs.
Yeah.
They better make it in an NTSC format.
They're all region free.
Okay, good.
See, 5820, where the fuck is that bitch? There we go. Let's see, the 5820 was actually, it was built by Lima. It doesn't say exactly when, but it went to the Polish state railways after the war. And in the 1970s, when the Polish steam era was coming to a close, and British steam preservation was, well underway, this locomotive was quickly purchased when it was still possible to import a locomotive on the cheap, and it ended up on the Keighley and Valley Railway in the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway in Yorkshire, and it returned to service in January of 2014 following an overhaul. So I think it has operated there, before when first got there. Now, at one point, it was actually painted up in British Rail black. God damn it.
I do have one more American locomotive I'd like to talk about that is very close to me, which was built because of wartime restrictions. And then, Michael, you can talk about a certain Texas type.
Oh, yeah.
Later on. But first, I'd like to talk about my locomotive, which was built because of the war restrictions.
But when will I get to talk about 58?
58 is going to be the final.
Oh, okay.
Because,
Patience, Michael. And of course, we're not talking about J&L 58.
Yeah.
Although, as amazing as that engine is.
Yeah. But anyway. We're going to be talking about the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe's 2900 series for the first time on this channel. Because, well, they're very close to me, actually. In fact, just miles away from where I am is the one that's being restored to operation. But anyway, we're not talking about that yet. The 2900
that they were built because of the War Production Board thing.
The 2900s were built in 1944 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works because of the restrictions that World War II was giving on them. So the Santa Fe wanted to start moving to diesel immediately, but of course they wanted to start.
Thank you, Mr. Roosevelt.
But because of the wartime restrictions, they either couldn't have anything or they had to have steam. And so they decided to bring out one last batch of great locomotives. And those were the 30 2900s from 2900 through 2929. And, they served their railway days for 9 years, hauling mixed traffic, like high-speed freight and passenger. And,
not even 10 years?
Yeah, not even 10 years, just 9 years. But yeah, then all of them were retired by the 50s, and a couple of them were saved, those being 2903, 2913, no, that's 2912, I think 2925, and 2926. Well, 2925 was languished outside to the elements along with cousin locomotive number 50. I think it was
5021.
Yeah, 5021.
Texas type that happens to share its engine number with a certain Overland type, but that's not important right now.
Well, however, both of those locomotives are getting a cosmetic refurbishment, luckily. But some of the other 2900s weren't lucky. 2903 has been inside a museum and has been featured in a couple of movies, but hasn't moved in decades. 2913, I think, has been sitting in a park for decades to come and with no future chance of preservation. But 2926 is the lucky one on the list. Outside in the dry air, timing elements were sort of kind to the locomotive, but sort of weren't either. But in 1999, a group of volunteers came to the park and in hopes of having the locomotive running again. And so they formed the New Mexico Steam Locomotive and Railroad Historical Society to refurbish and take care of the locomotive and run it on excursions. And the locomotive was moved out of the park within a year. And the giant drive wheels, the locomotive was so heavy that they had to drag the locomotive out of the park using actual rails instead of a truck or crane. So it was about a 2-day process when it came to moving the locomotive to a siding, and then finally going to their final destination at World Headquarters, as they like to call it, in which the lengthy restoration began for this humongous 484, because, I forgot to mention how great these locomotives were, because there were a couple of things about them that are meant for fuel consumption costs and overall maintainability, such as the roller bearing rods. These locomotives could go a very long time without having to be lubricated. That's why they had these. And 2, their high fuel capacity. They had the biggest tenders that the Santa Fe ever created with 16 wheels.
Yeah, 16 wheels divided over a pair of 4-axle bogies.
And, actually, I'm currently wearing my 2926 shirt right now.
Awesome.
But either way, the tender could hold 500, 500, I think. No, I don't have the facts on the back of this shirt. 2,500 gallons of water and 7,200 gallons of oil, I think. Well, either way, this is an oil burner. And so the locomotive's fuel consumption costs were cut in half because coal was becoming a thing they really needed for other things. But only 9 years. And so they brought it out of the park, as I said. And over a lengthy 20 years, the locomotive is starting to have a brand new life. Once it returns to service, it's probably going to be a very potential mainline star. Because theoretically, as an oil burner and a roller bearing rod locomotive, and featured with the positive train control, this locomotive could go anywhere in the country. So yeah,
and could possibly visit 3751 too.
Oh, there's a definite possibility of that. I've even talked with the guys who are restoring it, saying that they are definitely going to visit 3751 and maybe even do a doubleheader.
Needless to say, it'll be a foam fest.
Yeah, but why won't it? 2926's potential has been buried for so long, and it's now time for a chance to shine.
Yes.
But what's another locomotive? Oh yeah, Michael, it's your turn to talk about the Pennsylvania's wartime restricted locomotive.
But yes, now as many of you all know, during the World War II, the Pennsylvania Railroad was looking for heavier locomotives to pull freight and military equipment. However, wartime restrictions prohibited the development of a new locomotive design. So what was their option? Well, borrow 2 locomotives to see which one would perform better. And the 2 locomotives were a Chesapeake and Ohio T1 210-4 and, of course, a Norfolk Western Class A 2664. And who was the winner? The Chesapeake and Ohio 210-4s. So they decided they would reclassify them as J1s. And they were also nicknamed War Babies. And a total of 125 were built at the Pennsylvania Railroad Juniata shops in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Yeah. However, when the Pennsylvania Railroad converted it from steam to diesel power, the J1s were all scrapped. And they were all scrapped because they were not an original Pennsylvania Railroad design. Honestly, I could have loved to have one in preservation.
At least one. One
Yeah.
would have been just one.
Yeah, but hey, at least, of course, we also have a fictional Pennsylvania Railroad FG1 that KO Trains made if they decide to choose the Class A.
Oh, yeah.
Then again, I'm pretty sure if they built that and, actually used it, it probably would have been scrapped. And then we'd still be saying, and then people would still be putting 1218 on the number 1 spot on retired Steam Stars list.
Yeah.
Except for me, at least.
Well,
Stop gasping or wheezing.
Well, Steven.
It's wheezing.
You know what, guys?
Also, I sent you a message, Jim, about the Cylinder Cops freight train thing.
Oh, yeah.
Guys, I want your honest opinion. Should I make a top 10 retired Steam Excursion Stars? Just my own version.
Michael, did you start the photo charter yet?
No, I'm doing the video with you guys.
Well, I made my way back down to the coal mine place near Derrickson, where I'm just waiting.
And, well...
what did you say, Andrew?
Well, should I make my own top 10 retired Steam Excursion Stars list?
If you want to.
Yeah.
I mean, do you guys think I should?
Yes.
If you want to.
Okay.
We can't really stop you. It's your choice.
Yeah.
Also, should I do a top 15 or top 10 when it comes to retired Steam Excursion Stars from Britain?
From Britain?
Yeah, you should.
We're getting off topic here, actually. How about we go back to the war?
Yeah, okay. But what's another local?
Oh, I know one. How about the Central of Georgia Big Apple Floyd?
Oh!
Yeah, they were also...
that's a good one.
They were basically based off of the...
Southern Pacific
PS2 Northerns.
Yeah, I mean, you can't even tell that they're Southern Pacific, really. They look nothing like them. I mean...
Except for the drivers.
The only real hint is in the driving wheels and running gear, but that's it.
But, they had actually pretty small tenders for Northern. Like, the tenders that they had were like the size of the tenders that you might see on like a Mikado or something like that.
Cotton Bell 819.
Really got them efficient.
Cotton Bell 819. First time?
Yeah, it's a shame that none of the
one of the engines, I think they wanted to preserve one of them in Central Georgia, but the city was like, I don't want that. We don't want that. apparently they were probably too busy building a fucking library or some shit like that. I don't even know. So they scrapped the engine, which is a real fucking shame.
Yeah, I wish they could have preserved one.
Just one. Why can't we have nice things?
Very few people in America care about steam locomotives. What are they into anyway?
Truck month.
Yeah, that fucking bullshit. A car is just a box to get you from fucking point A to point. And like 90-something% of the population has a car or has driven a car before.
And yet,
yours, it's a truck.
The weird thing is that manufacturing a car, certifying it, and running it causes more pollution than running one engine.
Yeah, exactly.
People wonder why we're having global warming. It's because of the cars.
People like, I mean, I'm not like a car hater or anything like that. I am a bit of a petrol head myself. It's just that, people that jump on the bandwagon, they're just like, oh yeah, I gotta get me a Mustang. Yeah, Mustangs are, in my opinion, the most overrated American muscle cars in history.
Wait, why are we talking about cars now?
Well, because, I was thinking about, people not building, people are not focused on, trying to make replicas of extinct steam locomotives in the U.S., but in the U.K., there's shit pots of them.
Exactly.
The only one in the U.S. is the 5550 T1 Trust.
So far, anyways.
It is amazing. But, it would be nice to see other locomotives being resurrected. Owen would say he'd like to see Wabash P1s resurrected or something like that.
I would like to see, if there's any locomotive, I would like to see resurrected from the ground up.
Yes.
The Louisville,
spit it out.
The Louisville and Nashville's Big Emmas.
Yes, that's the one that I would really like to do. Although I'd probably build a replica, of one of the engines that already exists, or one that has existed because of the fact that there are two tenders that exist. Although I'm not sure if they're in good enough condition to at least be restored. But, the only thing we really need to do is build the locomotive itself and just tender behind it.
Well, we got 13 more minutes. So, Michael, how about you take the last time to talk about the official veterans locomotive?
Me? 258? Did we do the S100s yet?
Yeah, Oh, yeah, the S100s, actually, yeah. Never did.
You're talking about a certain other class of locomotives.
Oh, the S200s!
Oh, yeah! My voice just got so high!
Some other European thing, I guess.
Something from the Europe land.
Well, Jim, since you're from that region, you take the mic.
Yes. Probably the most infamous steam locomotives to be ever built. But yet they proved to be so ridiculously fucking rugged you wouldn't believe. I just have to look up the stats again. There's no sugarcoating it. We're talking about the proper German Kriegslocks, the Baureihe 52. Introduced in 1942, these 210 decapods were basically a blunt and more, simplistic. They were basically a simpler version of the Baureihe 50, which had already been in production for some time. But the 52s, they were specifically built, for the war effort. Like, they were intended to be cheap throwaway locomotives that could be built in massive quantities at a relatively in a relatively short time, to the point where even, brand new employees in locomotive factories could actually build one with their limited skill. Basically, in terms of how many that were built, the estimates kind of vary, but some say that there were over 7,000 of the damn things built from just this single class between 1942 and about 1951.
7,000.
Yeah, over 7,000. Some say over 6,000. Some say over 7,000. Either way, it is a metric shit ton.
Let's see.
Let's see. Geometry relating to tractive effort. I'm also going to give you the metric equivalents, though only for the key ingredients. They were basic 2-cylinder locomotives. The driving wheels were 1,400 millimeters or 55.1 inches in diameter. Your boiler pressure was 16 bar or 232.1 pounds per square inch. Your cylinders were 600 by 660 millimeters, which equals 23.62 by 25.98 inches, and the total tractive effort in the imperial measurement would be 51,897 pounds.
Wow.
And they weren't built to be particularly reliable, and they weren't built to be particularly durable locomotives. Like, they were only intended to literally last a few years. And some of they also had some fairly interesting problems, like the cylinder covers or the valve covers, where just very thin cast iron discs with a legendary level of inconsistency in their unreliability. Like, they weren't good at all, and many of them would explode below their minimum tolerance. At some point, due to a shortage of lead, they liked fusible plugs in the firebox, so the crown sheet was exposed. There wasn't any kind of final warning that the boiler was going to blow up. Then when you had to clean out the smoke box, you could actually just shovel out the ash through a hole underneath the door, but if it was particularly windy, it would just blow the ash into the bottom half of the locomotive, which wasn't really ideal, where all the moving parts are. And after the war, quite a lot of them had to be rebuilt with bigger, with new boilers that had bigger combustion chambers and so forth. So, yeah. But surprisingly, even though they weren't built as throwaway locomotives, the 52s were legendary for actually, tackling on for so goddamn long. Granted, in West Germany, they were actually kind of quickly gone. I believe they got rid of them by 1963 or 64. But do you want to know how long they lasted when they were finally withdrawn in Poland?
How long?
At some point in the 1990s.
What?
I shit you not. Poland kept the 52s going at some point into the 1990s.
Are there any other railroads that actually still use steam in revenue service other than in China?
I think, at the start of the 21st century, I don't know if it's still the case, but there were at least a handful of 52s still earning their keep in Bosnia. At the start of the 21st century. I don't know if that's still the case.
From what I've heard, they still use steam locomotives in certain areas that's freezing cold, because diesel locomotives would seize up because of the cold. So they would have these steam locomotives that could actually withstand the cold.
Yeah, the bits at the server that I have a steamer ban by. Oh god! Oh my god! 2 hours later.
2 hours later.
I'm leaving. Okay. And force a steam ban.
2 hours later.
Everybody, normal practice. Everybody. This fucking server.
2 hours later. Well,
Right.
now Michael can talk about the.
I'm gonna pull Lion Little Fate.
Now
Yeah.
Michael can talk about the Veterans Locomotive, also known
Yes.
as Wilmington and Western number 58.
Yes. Now, Wilmington and Western number 58 is a 060 switcher built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works of Philadelphia in October 1907 for the Atlanta, Birmingham, and Atlantic Railroad, where later she would become Atlanta, Birmingham, and Coast number 27. Unfortunately, eventually, this locomotive was sold to the U.S. Army and awarded number 6961 and was sold again to the Virginia Blue Ridge Railway and became their number 4. Later, she was purchased by the Med Corporation of Lynchburg, Virginia, and was rated number 300. Later on in 1963, Malcolm Altenegger purchased it for his Valley Forge Scenic Railroad. After operation ended there, Brian R. Woodcock purchased the engine in 1973, moving her to her home, the Wilmington and Western in Delaware. And she returned the locomotive to its original number. After sitting in storage for many years, Woodcock moved 58 to Allendorf, Pennsylvania in December 1988 to become the star attraction of his Avondale Railroad Center. It sat for display until 1997, when Woodcock donated 58 to the Wilmington and Western with the wish for the engine to be restored and operated in regular service. And by fall of 1998, the 58 was returned to service. And in May 23rd of 1999, the 58 received its new name, the Veterans Locomotive. And today, 58 is still operating an excursion service, and I got to see 58 this year during Halloween because I really wanted to see 58 this year, and I'm glad I certainly got to see her.
Yeah. But yeah. And also, speaking of 58, Michael, well,
Yes.
of an other 58. Since you live in Pennsylvania, or where
No, I live in New Jersey.
Oh. Well, do you by chance have the chance to ever go and see the JNL 58 sometime?
Wait, isn't the JNL 58 in Ohio or Pennsylvania?
It's in Pennsylvania.
Okay, hold on. Where's this locomotive?
It's at the Youngstown Steel Heritage Center. And this the JNL 58, they operate the locomotive monthly. Because of COVID, they haven't operated it this year.
It's the Youngstown Heritage. According to my address, it says Youngstown, Ohio.
What?
Yeah, it says Youngstown Steel Heritage is in 2261 Hubbard Road, Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not even.
Also, Michael, there's a steamer ban on that server that we were on.
I know, I saw it, and I was gonna do the photo shot, but now I have to do it somewhere else because those guys ruined it. Well, Tabardi ruined it.
Well, anyway, that was our 13th episode of Burning Subjects. And if you like this one, then tune in next time where we said we were going to talk about malaise this time, but it's Veterans Day. So next time, we're going to be talking about malaise, from the worst to the greatest.
Yeah,
And
and
probably get to talk about the skook.
Skookum, which
So, wait, next week is Thanksgiving, right?
oh yeah,
no,
actually,
2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, near my brother's goddamn birthday.
Yeah.
well yeah, in 2
and,
weeks.
Yeah, and for those who want to tune in for the Thanksgiving special, we're going to be doing a top 20 list of the sole surviving steam locomotives.
Yep. Whether they have been,
Expect more European stuff.
yeah, and expect also some more United Kingdom stuff too.
And Germany, and maybe even a little bit of Japan, too.
Oh yes, definitely.
Ooh, Japan. And also, that's why I said European.
But anyway, That was Burning Subjects, and we'll see you guys at the next running session.